Hello, friends, colleagues, clients, and trespassers. Welcome to Coach2Coach, the show where the world of coaching opens up to you, our listeners. I'm Laurie Schloff, Executive Communication Coach over too many decades, and I'm here with my semi-regular co-host, the talented Presence Coach, and my favorite and only child, Hava Horowitz. Coach2Coach aims to inform, teach, entertain, provoke, amuse, and invite you all to engage. We try to do this in a 15-minute time period. Well, super coaches can do it all. Each show will feature a coach supreme, someone who is changing the world one coachee at a time. And here we go, Coach2Coach to you. Today, we're going to talk about executive presence. Do you have it? And just what is it? Is it magic? Today, Hava and I will take a stab at defining executive presence in our own ways and share our different approaches. We'll also do a popular demo with a technique that we use in our programs. We love hearing your comments, so write, call, or drone us anytime. So hi, Hava. I haven't seen you in a while because you've been away. So I guess the question is, what have you been up to professionally?
Yeah. Well, firstly, I'm happy I'm still your favorite child. Hopefully that doesn't change by the end of this podcast. So I wonder if this is the same for you, Laurie, but typically the summers are a little bit more relaxed for us coaches. But in August, I had a great job with the United States Southern Command, the military, and I taught them authentic leadership communication, which was really just such a great opportunity to go into such a mind logic-based environment and work a little bit on the heart. That's what I've been up to.
And they took to it. You told me they took to it pretty well.
Yeah, I think people were really hungry for a new way of listening and relating with each other.
Super. All right. So,
and how about you, Laurie? What's going on in your world?
Well, I always have projects. So one project I'm working on, we'll talk more on another show, is like a legacy project. It's called Train the Presentation Coach Certificate Program. And it's for people who have to empower other people as presenters. So, for example, one of the wonderful people that just signed up for the program, she's in a very big company, and she's in charge of making sure that their events go well. And the events feature people in their company who are very average or worse. There's not that many speakers who are great. And she's so enthusiastic. Yeah. So she's an example of someone who's great for the program. And then, the corporate work, I love the small groups and the one-on-one. And something fun I did was helping someone with their wedding toast for their son. And of course, it was so good. Everyone said, I don't want to go on after her. So anyway, we do all kinds of things, anything related to communication. So good to hear what you're up to, Hava. So I want to get into executive presence because a lot of people say they want to get more executive presence, or maybe they say leadership presence. This concept of presence is something everyone seems to want. And they'll come to us to ask us, how can I get there? So definitions are always a little tricky. But from a communication coaching point of view, I did come up with a working definition of executive presence, and then I'd like to hear your thoughts. I actually came up with this because I was asked by a medical school who was trying to create leaders, what is executive presence? So I hope this won't be too boring. So executive presence is your unique and authentic style of messaging, oral image, and nonverbal skills, which can create an effective leadership style, which you flexibly adjust to the people and the situation. And finally, why? To influence positive interactions, growth, and change in your communication universe. It's wordy, but I think it sort of speaks to my philosophy about what I do. And what about you, Hava?
I think it's great. I think the definition you gave is just great because it speaks to what separates presence versus leadership presence, which is around the goals of influencing and portraying credibility. In your definition, you also spoke to some of the levers and dials that we can turn to really impact this very mysterious thing that we call presence. And, interestingly, I work with a couple of organizations who have completely banned this term, executive presence.
Oh.
Because it can feel like it's this magical thing. You either got it or you don't, right?
Oh.
And when we create these definitions, when we start to really unpack this term, we begin to think, okay, what are the buttons I can press? What are the dials I can turn? What are the levers I can actually use to shift and shape my presence? And I suppose one thing that I want to add is, executive presence isn't static. Your executive presence, Laurie, at your very best, looks very different than mine. Hava looks very different than the CEO of X Corp, right? And our executive presence changes dependent on who we're speaking with and the situation that we're addressing. So it's very flexible.
That's so true. Flexibility is so key. And it's so interesting. Maybe there are some best practices, but you flex them depending on the situation. So I know everyone wants us to get a little bit into method. So what's our approach? So I know you've had some unique training. I know I trained you to a certain extent, and then you learned a whole other range of tools. So what would you say is the main kind of approach or philosophy or tools you use?
Yeah, I think at the core, it's this concept of executive presence being malleable, not being one size fits all, not being one thing. And the best leaders, they're not necessarily the loudest. They're not necessarily the quietest. They're not necessarily the tallest. They're not the smallest. They're not the fastest talkers, not the slowest talkers, right? The best leaders, the best communicators have range. So when I work with folks on developing executive presence, it really is about how can we have all the tools in our toolbox to show up with the most effective kind of presence given the circumstances. And just to add one more metaphor to that to help explain, I like to think about presence, executive presence, like a box of markers, right?
Okay.
So maybe we have 12 markers in our box. Maybe some of us use the make people laugh to diffuse conflict marker. Or maybe you have the I'm not going to smile at all so people know that I take this seriously marker. Or we might have the how you doing? Oh my God, my weekend was amazing. Be everybody's best friend marker, right? But when we use any one of these individual markers over and over again, what starts to happen? What starts to happen here?
You're not flexible? Or
you're not flexible. And what happens to the marker when you use it over and over and over again?
Wears down.
It wears down. It runs out of ink. And we have all these markers that we haven't taken the cap off, waiting to be used full of ink. But they might be a little bit dusty or hard to get the cap off of. And so a lot of the work I do is relating to your definition, Laurie, is working with the voice, working with the body, working with the emotion to start to play with some of the markers in our box that we don't typically use.
Beautiful. Yeah, and I think maybe, tell me if I'm right, we've talked about this before, my work has had more of an outside-in approach, work on behaviors and the client feels better, whereas you also, I think, to a greater extent than I do, focus on internal, like your values.
Yeah.
So often to build an executive presence toolkit, I was thinking, so I teach tools, and usually I've been counting 26 tools because people want to know how many, 26 tools overall in message, which is structure and organization and holding interest, oral image, speech, voice, clarity, nonverbal, movement, gestures, and I'll talk about gestures when we do our demo. Obviously, eye contact, facial expression, virtual presence. And then I'd also add on interaction skills, obviously very important since it's all about connection. So I think I think it's great that I'm learning tools from you. You're learning tools from me.
I
And
want to start. I want to be tested on the 26th.
okay,
Like
okay.
it's my responsibility as your daughter to know the 26 floors.
That will come after our LinkedIn Live. Okay, I will give you a test. Okay, yoo-hoo! It's demo time. So from each of our approaches, let's share just a very brief activity, exercise, or technique.
Right. So you teed up, Laurie, exactly what I'm going to focus on in this demo, which is really more around why do we have certain kinds of presence, and doing a little bit of self-investigation to answer that question. So what we're doing as communication presence coaches is we're looking to build new presence habits. But first, we have to identify what are some of the presence habits we might already have. So just, listeners, Laurie, I want you to think of what's a presence habit that you might have that feels very subconscious. Maybe you've gotten feedback around it. Maybe you avoid eye contact. Maybe you speak very quietly. Maybe you speak very fast. But this is something that you do over and over and
over. Okay. Can this be something little? Can it be something little?
Yeah, or absolutely.
I smack my lips sometimes when I finish a sentence.
Did I see that?
I don't know.
That? I've never seen you do that. Huh.
Oh, really? I noticed it. I noticed it on video. I know. Huh. I can pick something else.
So maybe I'll explain a little bit more, and something else will come to you. For me, I'm a loud talker. That's a presence habit I have. I'm a loud talker. I know. I wonder where. Sometimes we develop these presence habits from a very early age, right? They're often a response to our environment, to our gender, to our social context. Many, many different things inform some of the presence habits that we build. So, for instance, some of the tallest people that I work with, they walk into a room, their arms are crossed, they're looking down, they're avoiding eye contact, they speak as quietly as humanly possible. Perhaps because from a very early age, they walked into a room, they were the tallest person, everyone's eyes were on them, and that was very uncomfortable. For me, as you know, better than anyone, I've always been a little pipsqueak.
Yes.
And I'm under 5 feet tall, always have been. When I learned from a very early age, when I walked into a room, I needed to make myself known in order to get attention.
Yep.
And so I developed this presence habit of being really, really big and being really, really loud.
Yeah.
In a way, they're kind of survival strategies.
Yeah.
Right?
Communication survival strategies. I like that.
That's right. But they're not necessarily useful in all contexts. So the question now is, what is this presence habit that you can't seem to knock or seems very unconscious? Why might you have developed that habit? And what's a new habit that you want to develop that counterbalances that old habit?
Okay.
So for me, when I walk into a room, instead of saying, "Hey, I'm here, what's going on, everybody?" maybe I'll try out. I walk into the room, I smile, and I greet folks non-verbally. Just something to experiment with, right?
I like
what do you
it.
think, Laurie?
I like it. And in terms of like my consciousness about when I finish a sentence and smack, what I can tell myself is, okay, next time I say a sentence, finish with my mouth a little bit more open, like this, like this. Well, that's very mini. I mean, your example is more broad, but I love the idea of what's a habit may not be bad, may not be serving me, and how can I pull a different marker, different part of me that's inside and is sort of waiting to get out if I just let it. So that's great. All right. Well, that was a great demo. So we are about to wrap up. Yeah. Anything else you wanted to share, Hava?
I was curious about that lip smacking. Is there anything that you could point to in your life that might be a reason why you developed that lip smacking punctuation?
I'm not sure. I want to think about that. Maybe my mom did it.
When? Huh.
I'm not sure. Or, you know me, I'm obsessed with lip gloss. Maybe I'm maybe it's soothing for me to feel my lip gloss.
Yeah.
Who knows? But
Makes sense
to think
Makes
about.
sense. Or maybe it's like a mic drop effect, right? Like the sentence is done. I'm going to smack my lip.
Very funny. Right. Well, it's better than giggling, because I once worked with a giggler, very serious, brilliant woman, but she giggled after every sentence. So anyway, this was fantastic. I loved having Coach Hava Horowitz here. And just to wrap things up, that enhancing your executive presence can lead to more visibility, recognition, and even career opportunities. So I invite all of us to ask, how am I coming across? And how can I make an even greater impact through communication? So remember, your presence can make for a better world, one situation at a time. Thanks for being here, and see you next time on Coach to Coach. Keep on coaching.